There's a robot on someone's desk right now running 200 different apps,
A $299 robot.
and none of the apps cost anything.
We've seen this before, just not with something that has hands.
200 apps built by strangers for a robot most people haven't heard of yet. That's not a product launch. That's a community that already exists.
And the number that keeps coming back to me is $299. That's the price of a decent dinner out for a robot with an app store.
The smartphone comparison is hard to avoid. 2008, the App Store opens, 60-year-old companies suddenly irrelevant, 16-year-olds building things that millions of people use. The platform created the developers, and the developers created the reason to own the platform.
Except with smartphones, you are betting on software touching a device everyone already carried. This is software touching physical space, your desk, your room. The robot hands something to you or it doesn't.
Which is a completely different problem than an app that loads a web page slightly wrong.
Right, if a to-do app crashes, you reload it. If a robot arm miscalculates...
The physics don't roll back.
So Hugging Face is making a bet that open source can solve what closed robotics labs have been struggling with for decades. Boston Dynamics spent 30 years and hundreds of millions of dollars. Figure and 1X raised enormous rounds. And here's a $299 desktop robot with community-built software trying to establish the same kind of ecosystem from the ground up.
The desktop part matters. These aren't warehouse robots or surgical systems where a narrow, perfect function justifies the cost. Reachy Mini is sitting next to your monitor. It's in the category of things you buy because you're curious.
And curious people build things. The 200 apps didn't come from Hugging Face's engineering team. They came from the people who bought the robot and wanted it to do something it didn't do yet.
That's exactly the dynamic that made Android dangerous even when iOS was more polished. The ceiling on a closed system is what the company imagines. The ceiling on an open one is what everyone imagines.
And Hugging Face already owns the open source AI model space. Millions of developers already live there. Dropping a robot into that ecosystem isn't starting from zero. It's handing a new toy to a community that already knows how to build.
So the question isn't whether developers will show up. They already did. The question is what happens when 200 apps becomes 2,000, and the things this robot can do start to feel less like demos and more like reasons.
The last time a platform hit that inflection point, we stopped calling it a platform and started calling it infrastructure.
And infrastructure is hard to displace once it's there.
The App Store model has one problem nobody solved yet.
The apps can be weapons.
There's a class of software called open source repositories, shared collections of code, like public libraries of building blocks that developers pull from to build almost everything. When you use an app, there's a good chance it's running code that thousands of strangers contributed. And now, AI coding agents are doing the same thing, browsing repos, pulling in tools, writing software autonomously.
A security researcher built something called OpenClaw to show what that means. It's a legitimate tool, genuinely useful, helps AI agents interact with any repository, meaning it lets automated software reach into those public code libraries and use what's there. And it also installs a backdoor, not because it was hacked, because that's how it works.
The backdoor lives in a configuration file that tells AI agents how to use the software, instructions written for the AI, not for humans. And because those files are meant to guide agent behavior, they can tell the agent to do almost anything: exfiltrate code, modify files, phone home.
Existing security scanners don't catch it. Every scanner is looking for malicious code. This isn't code. It's instructions to an AI that then runs the code, and nobody has built a scanner that reads the manual.
SNCC's security research team already found 76 real payloads using the same technique in the wild, meaning this isn't theoretical. Someone is already using it.
The thing that makes this hard is structural. When a human developer installs software, the software runs. When an AI agent installs software, the software runs and it reads the manual. And the manual can tell it to do whatever the author wants.
Every security assumption about software supply chains was built around humans being the ones executing, and now there's an entirely different kind of reader.
Every major tech company is trying to build more data centers right now and running into the same wall. There isn't enough electricity. Not we need to upgrade some infrastructure. The grid literally cannot supply what AI requires at the scale these companies want to build.
So someone looked at that problem and said, what if we just left?
Floating steel spheres in the ocean, powered by waves. Peter Thiel and a group of other investors just put $140 million into exactly that idea.
The ocean solves several things at once. Wave energy is free and constant. There's no permitting process because you're in international waters, and the cold seawater handles cooling, which is one of the most expensive parts of running AI chips on land.
A data center generates enormous heat. On land, you need dedicated cooling systems, which consume almost as much power as the computation itself. The Pacific Ocean is a cooling system that already exists.
And if you're in international waters, you skip the part where you spend 4 years negotiating with a utility and a city council.
The plan is that these spheres process AI requests and beam the results back via satellite. You ask something, the answer gets computed somewhere in the Atlantic, a satellite relays it back to your phone in roughly the time you'd expect.
The latency question is real. Satellites add milliseconds that land-based servers don't. For some applications that matters. For a lot of AI workloads, it probably doesn't.
The latest funding round is $140 million, with total investment reportedly still climbing, which means this is past the interesting idea stage.
At some point, AI infrastructure became a problem strange enough that the reasonable-sounding solutions stopped working. The question is whether the unreasonable ones will.
A Coinbase engineer noticed something that almost everyone building AI has been walking right past. AI agents browse the internet constantly, reading articles, pulling data, using services, and they never look at ads. They don't have eyes. They don't have wallets. They just take the content and leave.
And ads are how nearly everything on the internet pays for itself.
So his argument is that as more browsing gets handed off to software, the revenue model that funds the whole thing starts hollowing out. His fix is that AI agents automatically pay tiny crypto amounts, fractions of a cent, for what they use. Machine pays machine, no human involved.
Which sounds like a footnote until you realize that could mean restructuring how every website, every API, every online service makes money.
The internet wasn't built for customers that can't see billboards, and nobody's agreed yet on what replaces them.
The U.S. government is now formally planning for a scenario where power grids, water systems, and internet infrastructure all have to keep running with zero outside network contact, completely cut off for weeks or months at a time.
During a conflict, not a natural disaster, a conflict.
Chinese hacker groups have already gotten inside some of these systems, not to do anything yet, just to wait. The fear is that they could flip a switch at exactly the wrong moment and the grid goes dark when it matters most.
So this is CISA essentially saying, assume we lose access to our own infrastructure. Now what?
Wargaming a siege, but the walls are made of software.
The fact that this is now official government planning tells you where the threat assessment actually sits. Not theoretical, not distant. Apple is paying $250 million because it ran ads claiming AI Siri features were available now, and according to the lawsuit, they weren't, and in many cases still aren't nearly 2 years later.
Around 36 million iPhone buyers are eligible for up to $95 each.
The features were in the commercials. People bought the phones, then the features didn't show up.
And Apple kept selling.
There's a version of this where it's just a legal footnote in a big company's quarter, but there's another version where this is the first time a major company actually faced consequences for selling AI promises that weren't real yet.
Hardware moves fast, lawsuits move slow. The gap between those two speeds is where a lot of AI marketing currently lives.
36 million people found out the hard way.
Iranian government hackers broke into networks and made it look like a ransomware attack, but they never actually locked any files.
Because ransomware wasn't the point. Ransomware is when attackers encrypt your data and demand payment to unlock it. but these attackers just wore that disguise while quietly copying everything they wanted.
The victim thinks they're dealing with criminals asking for money. Meanwhile, someone is reading their files in Tehran.
It's a near-perfect cover. Ransomware is so common now that everyone has a playbook for it. You bring in incident response, you negotiate, you focus on recovery, and in all that noise, the actual theft just happened.
And once more spy operations figure out that ransomware is a costume, not a crime,
The signals we use to detect an attack become the signals that hide one.
Tomorrow's gonna be a good one.
we keep saying that.
We keep being right.
Find us wherever you listen. If something we said today stuck with you, tell someone. That's how this thing grows.
Back tomorrow. See you then.
Singularity Pulse is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is financial, legal, or professional advice. Views expressed are our own.
I'm Knox. Every Saturday on Pulse Deep Dive, one story told in acts. This season, how AI happened, who really invented the internet, and going back to the moon 53 years later. New chapter every Saturday. Find it wherever you listen.
Origins is a different kind of show. Every Sunday, we investigate the forces that shape the modern world, the geography, the science, the commerce, the decisions made centuries ago that are still playing out today. Find it wherever you listen to this podcast.